Hello, everyone. Welcome back. I thought it was going to glitch out on me. It did not. Who am I? Rudolph the green-nosed, green-dotted reindeer? What's happening? Okay. This is part 4. I'm going to do this real fast. You didn't see this. See, I do this. I copy that so that after I hit the end recording, I just jump right over to this thing right here, and see, this will be the video, and then boom, I just do that, and then it's done. I just finished Dr. Roy. Inside look. You don't care. But anyways, before we get started, thumbs up, subscribe, donate channel, thanks button, request videos, you get sponsored title, video. Sorry, just wanted to get out of the way of this. The CIA need to know policy assures that an agent would be unable to jeopardize more of a given mission than that part necessary for his particular role. That makes sense.
On April 23, 1963, the first news release came out concerning President Kennedy's trip to Dallas.
What happened at that time, Kennedy himself was, on the one hand, he was talking about having a big speech before the 2506 Brigade, saying this is going to be delivered, this flag is going to be delivered to a free Cuba, we'll never let up, and blah, 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 all that political rhetoric, when in fact, his emissary, William Atwood, was at that time negotiating with Raul Castro to ease up on some of the restrictions and build up improve the relationship with the United States. Well, I mean, this is not what the CIA wants to hear. So what they decided to do was they were going to create this disturbance, and which was probably attempt on the life of the president, or a seemingly attempt on his life, that would be laid to the door of the pro-Castro Cubans. That way it would inject a little life back into their program. So that was what we were told. So as part of our role in it was going to be was that we were going to forge a lot of identification, Secret Service identification. Not only the cards that they carry, but the lapel pins that they wear. The problem in this, of course, is the fact.
Hold on. Really? Come on. That looks like Clint Hill. He is. Hey, stop. Clint Hill, he is the Secret Service agent for Jackie Kennedy at the time. But he's and I've said this before, he's the one who, after Kennedy's assassinated, he runs to the back of the limo and jumps on. But yeah, that looks like a young Clint Hill.
Identification. Not only the cards that they carry, but the lapel pins that they wear. The problem in this, of course, is the fact that they change that lapel every 2 or 3 days. Of course, the only person who would actually know would be another Secret Service agent. I mean, I'd look at it, I wouldn't know, you wouldn't know, but they thought it was important enough to, hey, to have the real thing. So we were waiting on this before we could make our delivery to Dallas.
Chauncey was to deliver the fake Secret Service identification to Dallas. But even before Dallas, the president had been scheduled to speak in Miami. However, the Secret Service got wind of an assassination plot against the president in that Florida city.
We prepared some stuff for the Miami thing, which was supposed to take place on November the 9th.
This incident.
Yeah, this incident. And we provided the same type of identification as we did for Dallas. The only problem is that they intercepted a telephone conversation that indicated that there was going to be an attempt on Kennedy's life, and they didn't have the motorcade. They took him directly to where he was going to speak by helicopter and returned him by helicopter, and they had to cancel that operation. So we were waiting for the second one, which was going to be in Dallas, because it seemed that was going to be a viable project. And we were waiting for the word from Twombly what the color of the identification badges were going to be for that particular day. That was the only thing remaining that we had to put together and to be delivered, and how many we were going to produce.
Chauncey and his Confederates knew that JFK was going to be in Texas.
Early on, we knew that he was going to be in San Antonio, Houston, Fort Worth, and Dallas. However, the exact date, we didn't learn the exact date until probably maybe the as late as the 15th or 16th. I'm really not sure exactly when we learned, because his agenda hadn't been exactly set.
Chauncey was waiting to hear when and how many sets of fake Secret Service IDs were needed in Dallas. Then the orders arrived.
It came from Philip Twombly. He did not tell us precisely how we were to get it there, except that it was to be delivered, hopefully it was to be delivered on the night of the 21st.
Twombly's memo, it's dated November 12, 1963, to Jack, Los Angeles Stamp and Stationery Company, says, in part, "Number needed undetermined at this time, but will not be in excess of 15. Twombly's referring to the sets of fake Secret Service IDs. He says, schedule accordingly.
The color of the Secret Service acting ones, the ones that are charged with the protection of the president, they wear these lapel pins.
That's Clint Hill.
Easily recognizable. They look like a little, kind of like a good conduct medal. But, and they change them from time to time because they figure you have the same color too long, somebody's going to make a handful of them. So they keep changing them. So we didn't find out until about the 16th that the color it was going to be, which turned out to be the same colors as they have on the flag of Texas.
Those were the pins Chauncey was ordered to deliver to Dallas.
Our intention first was to fly directly from Los Angeles to Dallas, which is no problem. Then on November the 12th, I received a letter from Peter Licavoli, in which he told me to be sure and stop by the ranch, that Charlie Masseri and Charlie Nicoletti and Leo Masseri wanted to go to Dallas and on their way to New Orleans. He indicated that he had picked up for us a large station wagon, which was registered in the name of John O'Malley, and all the documents indicated John O'Malley. I had a driver's license and identification of the name of John O'Malley, which is the name I decided that I was going to use on this particular trip.
Chauncey picked up the mafia hitman at Grace Ranch, owned by Licavoli. The ranch also provided safe haven for contract agents of the CIA.
So we arrived there expecting that we would all four fly to Dallas. However, when we got there, we discovered that Nicoletti in Missouri had a hell of a lot of luggage, and it was heavy luggage and weighed a lot. So we thought that it was going to be too risky flying it, doing it that way. So we had this station wagon. We said, oh, what the hell? I mean, we'll drive from Tucson to Dallas. So we all took off. We encountered first at Lordsburg, New Mexico. We had car trouble, which held us up for a few hours while they were trying to get the part. Then just west of El Paso, we hit a storm that was a windstorm was so bad that we had to stop. You couldn't drive. Took the paint right off the car.
A check of the El Paso Times weather report for November 21st. Quote, a frontal system passed through the city about 7:30 a.m. with winds recorded from 29 to 35 miles per hour.
It's not super bad.
It was a coup d'etat.
Hold on.
And
Hold on. A whole new form of government is going to take over our country. Jack Ruby. That was my stomach. I apologize.
It was a coup d'etat, and I do not believe that that is the way, not in this country, for a change of command.
JF.
Just so you're clear, you didn't hear me just fart and then mute the mic. I shuffled decks of cards, so I'm sorry.
JFK and Jackie Kennedy arrive in Dallas by plane. It's November 22nd. Early the same morning, Chauncey also reaches Dallas. He drops off the mob hitmen and checks into the Adolphus Hotel.
I received a note from Twombly telling me that he was going to be, that week, he was going to be at the bottling convention in Dallas. He told me that he had made a reservation for Joe Caddy and I at the Adolphus Hotel where we could stay and rest up a little if we wanted to be before we came back to the coast. He also indicated that he was going to be staying at a private home, which I believe was probably with Clinton Murchison, because he was a very close friend of Clinton Murchison, and that also that he would be meeting Kendall there. Kendall, of course, was a Pepsi-Cola, was another one that bragged about being the eyes and ears of the CIA.
Twombly's note to Chauncey tells him to stay as long as you like at the Adolphus. Twombly also reserves a room for Joe Canty, a fellow pilot and CIA contract agent. Everything is taken care of. Just sign the tab. Twombly continues, Kendall and I are staying with friends. Twombly's instructions to Chauncey were simple.
We were supposed to meet an individual by the name of Homer Echevarria. Homer Echevarria had he was violently anti-Kennedy. No one hated Kennedy any more than Homer Echevarria.
According to records from the House Select Committee on Assassinations, the Secret Service received a tip that on November 21st, 1963, Homer S. Echevarria was overheard bragging his group had plenty of money, and that his backers will proceed with the arms deal as soon as we take care of Kennedy.
And at that time, he and a guy by the name Paulino Sierra, they were running around putting together what they said was a expeditionary force that was going to invade Cuba. The Cubans, of course, that was just the thing that he actually wanted to. They wanted to hear. So we were to put it in a station wagon owned by Homer Echeverria. They were to. They gave us the tag number and so forth of the pickup truck, and and keys. We had a set of keys, master keys, and we were just going to put the false identification. There was nothing else, no guns, anything else. Would put it in there and lock it up, and that would be it.
A picture taken years later in a parking lot behind the notorious Grassy Knoll shows Chauncey pointing to the area where his station wagon was parked.
They had a parking area that was used by law enforcement personnel that was locked, which we had a key to. And we were able to go in there, and we went around, we looked for the pickup truck, and we didn't see it. So we relocked the gate, and Canty and I decided that we would go out to Redbird Airport.
At Redbird Airport was a plane just purchased using CIA covert funds.
That was the plane that was sitting there waiting for us to take it back to California. Or actually, we were going to take it back to Bermuda Dunes, where Ernie Dunleavy, there at the Bermuda Dunes Aircraft Company, was going to do a top overhaul on it to make sure that it was in good condition. So we went out, and I dropped off Caddy there, and it's interesting that Dwayne January, who at that time was the manager of that airport, he still remembers that plane very well. And the reason he remembers the plane very well is the fact that the painting was on it. It had been owned by a gear company, and it had a beautiful rendering of a huge gear that took up the entire tail on this aircraft. And he remembers it, and he also remembers it because of the fact that Canty spent so long running the engine up that he had a complaint from the residents around there that he was making too much noise. So, but that was his job to do that. So then I went back, and when I came back to Dealey Plaza this time, the pickup truck was there.
It was now about 10:30 in the morning.
I took the satchel holding all the IDs, and I put them in the pickup truck, locked it, walked away. About 11 o'clock, a person who had never met Homer Echeverria, but he had been introduced to me. I mean, I'd seen pictures of him, and it appeared that's who it was. Came, got in the pickup truck, and drove off.
A few minutes later, Chauncey noticed some suspicious activity in the parking lot behind the Grassy Knoll.
Now, while I was there were several other cars that were in and out and the parking lot that had people in them that, at least one of whom I knew very well. One of the persons who drove in sat at the entrance for a long time and then left was an individual by the name of Aldo Vera Serafin, who was one of the foremost assassins in the world.
Chauncey observed him talking on the radio, back and forth.
Yep, it looked like he's clicking the mic and so forth and talking on it and so forth. And then after a while, he left, drove out of the parking area.
According to Chauncey, Serafin was a freelancer, an assassin for hire.
He was freelance. He worked for anybody who would.
Chauncey was ordered to stay in the area of the plaza. Twombly told him some sort of staged pro-Castro demonstration would take place.
So if that guy is just a freelance assassin, Did the CIA pay him just as an added bonus to bring, not an added bonus, but an added shooter to bring him in? Or did that guy get brought in by someone else or some other organization? FBI, the mob? Because if he knew him and he knows he's a freelancer, he's not showing up to do it for free. So who paid him? I'm going to stick with the CIA for now.
In a support position, almost like an observer, I guess. So I strolled up by the, almost up to the corner of Houston and Elm Street. I was on the south side. I never actually got up there. And I looked over there, and I saw quite a few Latin types. I saw individuals that I had seen in the past. One of them, of course, was Luis Posada, who was another assassin. Freddie Lugo, who was also another world-class assassin. And of course, I thought I saw Orlando Bosch. The FBI said later on, it couldn't have been Bosch. Bosch wasn't there because we had him under such tight surveillance. But I certainly wouldn't believe the FBI. So he was up there. Other individuals that looked, I thought that I saw Rip Robertson. He was another, had been he was a CIA contract agent. But I hadn't seen him since '54. So, you know, it might have looked like him. Another individual I thought I saw was a guy named Tony Poe, stood for Tony Posfany. But there again, he really wasn't, because later on, he told me, I saw him later on, and he hadn't been out of Southeast Asia. But it was somebody looked like him and wore that same, they had the floppy fatigue type stuff that they wore, the military type hat and so forth. So he was another mysterious looking guy that was over there. So they were over there, and you know, they're wandering around Dealey Plaza for some purpose, and they had an unusual number of, I mean, it'd be hard to find at the Soldier of Fortune meet. It would be hard to find as many military types that was wandering around in Dealey Plaza. And of course, you really wondered about that. But after all, we were getting ready to have a demonstration, so I thought. So anyway, it didn't bother me too much. And of course, you're tempted to go over and talk to these guys, but then again, you're operating on a need-to-know basis, and so you leave these guys alone. You don't do anything about it.
Chauncey would learn later there were some other notorious individuals in Dealey Plaza.
I've always thought that it was some effort to, muddy the water. We got as many bad guys running around as you can possibly get.
All right, I was just scanning forward because I wanted to pause, but about an hour and 25 minutes, there's a pause there, and we'll break it there.
And they all seem to gravitate. It just seems to me more than coincidental that they would all show up in Dallas at the same time. And I think that if they had, if the Sheriff's Department, the FBI, or the Dallas Police Department, if they had done their job, that jail down there would have been full of nefarious characters with all kinds of reputations.
Chauncey was worried. His instincts told him something was up, but his orders from Twombly were clear.
I had these BATF credentials, and they were saying if you have any trouble, you go and jump in this boxcar. They identified the boxcar. You get in this boxcar, which will appear to be locked. It'll have a seal on it and everything else, and sweat out what happens if they have some kind of a serious confrontation.
The boxcar was in a train yard behind the grassy knoll. It was the 9th car in a line of boxcars. But there was another order given Chauncey, an order for weapons.
Usually, almost all of the requests for armament of any kind, either just stock rifles, pistols, to silenced rifles, silenced pistols, almost all of it came from George Reynolds in Morgan City.
Reynolds told Chauncey to make a delivery.
I had instructions that I was to deliver some guns and some IDs to 2 other individuals. One of whom was Charles Harrelson, and another was an individual that I knew as Richard Montoya. Charles Harrelson, I had never met. He had been pointed out to me one time in John Mason's gun store by a guy I was with, and he said, that is Charles Harrelson, that he's a part owner in this gun store. Now, I had, later on, I did some false ID work for Charles Harrelson, except he was using the alias of Terry Southern at that time. So I'd seen his picture, so I mean, enough that you're pretty, after seeing him the one time and having his picture, I mean, you're a pretty good idea that, hey, this is the guy. So he walked up to me and he said, are you John O'Malley? And I said, yeah. And he said, I'm Charles Harrelson. I said, no, you're Charles Harper, because that was the name of the identification, was the name of Charles Harper. And so I gave him the ID, and then they had requested that I bring over a couple of guns for him and the other guy, who I'll get to in a minute. And so I gave him this Smith & Wesson Model 40, and I gave that to him. And the other guy was a guy named Richard Montoya. I had met him sometime before. I met him at the home of Orlando Piedra. Orlando Piedra had been formerly the chief of police of Havana. He was at that time living in his plush estate on Pine Tree Drive in Miami, and he was actually Batista's paymaster. So I'd met him. We went over to see Piedra about something.
I'm just glad there isn't a test on remembering these names, because I would already have failed.
And this guy was introduced to me as Richard Montoya, and he spoke very good Spanish. I assumed that he was probably an American-born person that spoke Spanish, because he didn't look, he didn't look like a Cuban. That he was probably one of Piedra's bodyguards, because he had a lot of them. So that was the second guy. So I gave him his ID, and then I and gave him the gun. I gave him and so they took this and they walked away.
Okay, we're going to end this one here. This is part 4. I'm not adding much to this because I can't correct his story. I don't know it. So I'm listening just like you would be listening at home, not watching me do this. Just, if you believe him, okay. If you don't believe him, okay. I really have no idea. I like that he tells the full names. There's something about that. It's kind of like, it's challenging in terms of, if you don't believe me, here are the names. There are some pictures of them. They're documented pieces of paper. I could watch something saying this guy's full of just garbage in a week and be like, oh, okay, yeah, that guy lied. Like, I can easily be swayed. I've said that at the end of every one of these videos, but it's just the truth. So until I do part 5 is going to be a little bit shorter. It's going to run from 125 to 143. I peeked ahead at that pause. But this one was over 20 minutes, so it happens. But until part 5, have a good day, have a good night.